Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Wow. First of all, I just want to note that how impressive it is to get this large a crowd of folks out to come and listen to a bunch of talk on a characteristically frigid Ithaca winter day. Thank you all for showing up this evening. I gather the city made it even a little bit easier by blocking off the parking on the street. That was nice, too. Anyway, I am Eric Lerner. I'm chair of the City of Ithaca Democratic Committee. And this evening we are having so far as I know, first ever here in Ithaca anyway, forum for the presidential primary campaigns. We don't have any of the candidates with us tonight, but we have a local person acting as a spokesperson for all but one of the presidential campaigns. Our goals this evening are threefold. Number one, we wanted to give folks a chance to learn more about the candidates and learn more about the campaigns. Number two, we wanted to give all of the campaigns an opportunity to get their message out and potentially recruit people who may be able to help them in the sprint between now and the upcoming primary. And thirdly, we'd like this evening to be a reminder to all of us that this is a primary and that whoever emerges from the primaries and the Democratic Convention has a big job to do in defeating the Bush administration in November, and that we're all going to have to be rowing in the same direction in order to make that happen. And I'm hoping that all of us at the front of the room, all of us out in the audience, will be able to remember that. So I want to do some quick introductions and announcements and then get on with the business of this without taking more time than I have to. I'll note that this evening's forum is sponsored by the County Democratic Committee and organized and hosted by the City Democratic Committee. Before I do anything else, I want to thank the 5 city ward chairs, Dan Lamb, J.R. Claiborne, Martha Hamblin, Dorothy Reddington, John Hunt, for their help in organizing tonight, as well as Kathy Zoller, Irene Stein, both of whom helped out in various ways, Paul Smith and Claudia Garcia, who are doing the videotaping. There's going to be 2 or 3 broadcasts of tonight's forum on cable access. We don't know the dates yet, but that will be announced in due course. Those of you aware that we are trying to revive the City of Ithaca Democratic Committee from a few years of latency. There will be another meeting of the City Democratic Committee at a to-be-announced date in the second half of March. Watch this space for further announcements. Anyone that hasn't kept track of it is hereby reminded that the New York Democratic primary will be on Tuesday, March 2nd, and that the deadline for new voter registration to vote in that primary is Friday, February 6th. So anyone who is not yet a registered voter, there is still time. If you're already registered in some other party, it's too late to change. And there is a generous stack of voter registration forms on the table by the door, and everyone present is encouraged to take half a dozen with you and seek out your friends and neighbors who haven't had the sense to get registered as voters yet and make sure that they do. There are also tables in various corners of the room with literature and sometimes persons from one or another of the campaigns. There's also a table from the Bush Must Go group, which recently organized, which is not so much supporting a campaign. And I promised to give Peter Myers 60 seconds to explain who they are and what they're about. Peter, I understand, is now registered as a Democrat. Go for it.
After enough dialogue with Irene Stein, I felt like I had no choice. Bush Must Go is a campaign. Basically, it really got its start in April of last year with the Peace Summit that took place. There was about 150 people that took part in this Peace Summit, and we're really more of a movement. Our vision, just briefly, is in coordination with other local and national groups. We are part of a sustained campaign of political mobilization to defeat Bush in 2004 and build a large, active, and enduring community movement devoted to peace, justice, social equality, and grassroots democratic participation. So really, I feel that we're a unifying presence in Ithaca. We're not focused on a particular candidate. We're really about raising some of the issues that bring us all together. I encourage you to see our yard signs in the back. We've got 1,000 of these, well, 850 now. And we've got actually a space for your own message to go into. For example, make living wage jobs, not war. Bush lied, thousands died. 2000 promised jobs, 2003, 3 million jobs lost. So the last thing I want to say, I want to not go over my 60 seconds. There's a gentleman who used to live in Ithaca named Steve Brower, you may have heard of. He's actually written a book called Robbing Us Blind. It's about the Bush administration and how we're being robbed blind right now. He's going to be at Autumn Lee's bookstore in our headquarters. We're actually renting space above Autumn Lee's used books at 4:30 on Saturday. I encourage people to come out to that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, before I do anything else, let me introduce our panel. All of these folks are local folks who have agreed to be spokespersons for one or another of the presidential campaigns. And I trust that we will all be aware that all of these folks are not experienced professional orators, but they're friends and neighbors who are here to share with us why they're supporting particular candidates. And I hope we'll take what they're saying and respond to them in that spirit. We have Kathy Kelly speaking for the Edwards campaign, Paul Bardashevich speaking for the Kerry campaign, Paul Moore for the Kucinich campaign, Joan Beaucaire for the Clark campaign, Ken Sanderson for the Lyndon LaRouche campaign, and Martha Robertson for the Dean campaign. We'd hoped to have someone from the Lieberman campaign this evening, but it didn't work out. So it goes. I hope many of you, all of you, found the agenda handouts by the door that at least sketch what it is we're going to be doing this evening. We started at about 7:40 instead of 7:30, so I'm going to bump all the times by about 10 minutes, but I want to be clear to everyone, including the presenters, that we have promised the Women's Community Building that we'll be out of the building and they can lock the doors at 9:30. So there's going to be a rather narrow window after we finish up with the presentation part of the meeting to wrap up, do whatever schmoozing you need to do, and get out of here so they can lock up. Martha Hamblin, sitting front and center here, is our timekeeper, and speakers, do pay attention to her. Do you have a bell, Martha, or are you just going to... Okay.
Start waiting to do that means you need to wrap up.
Yeah, when your time runs out, we'll give you about 5-10 seconds to finish your sentence, but that's it. And I think that about covers the ground. We have drawn lots for the order in which folks are going to speak, and that'll rotate as we move to different questions. There are 3 questions that have been given to the presenters in advance, and that each of them will have an opportunity to answer. Then we're going to throw it open to questions from any of you, but the deal there, and I'll go over this again later, is that we're not going to permit questions to the entire panel. What we'll do is go through the speakers one at a time and invite a question for speaker number 1, a question for speaker number 2, and on. And I'll remind you of that when the time comes. So, question number 1, intended to be pretty generic, is, Democrats of all stripes agree that Bush must go. What makes your candidate best qualified to unite the party after the convention and carry us to victory in November? Each speaker has 3 minutes, and Kathy, you're going first?
Yes, I guess I am.
Okay.
Thank you. Nice
And
to
please, from the microphone.
I don't know how does it.
These are the live mics
I have to
for the
go.
PA and for the video. I should have said that. I'm sorry. You should.
I can go. No more disturbance by my side. If I got my cane, I'm sorry. Are you timing me yet?
Yeah.
Okay. America needs hope. The reason I have chosen to vote for John Edwards is because he has made me hope again. That intangible joy is not something you can manufacture or buy. Few people have that gift. Kennedy had it. Martin Luther King Jr. had it. It's a rare gift. I think that after years of a conservative monopoly in our country, it's time to take our country back, and to do that we need hope. Also, Edwards is the only candidate who addresses the issue of poverty in America. I live in poverty and have done so since I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis about 15 years ago. Most people don't grasp the true extent of poverty in our country, nor the true extent that services to the poor, elderly, and disabled are being eroded year by year in this, the wealthiest of all nations in the world in history. I don't have the time to go into detail about how the Bush White House has constantly cut programs that are necessary for survival, how they have taken the teeth out of the Americans with Disabilities Act, how Medicaid and Medicare are in crisis. Most of you already heard these things from your friends or relatives in crisis, enough to understand that our government cannot continue to cater to the extremely wealthy at the cost of those who are struggling to survive. I am concerned about the many ways in which the Republican Party, under the auspices of Mr. Bush, have weakened our country within and without. People need jobs. They need affordable medical care. They need clean air and water and safe food. We need strong small businesses and support for family farmers. We need to reestablish our integrity at home, within our corporations, and in the world at large. John Edwards addresses all these issues and far more. He has a plan for our country's recovery, and it is detailed and covers issues that are of concern to all of us. When I realized I would have to cut my original speech substantially to fit time limitations, I started trying to make a list of Edwards' abundant proposals. If I just read the list in outline form, I wouldn't have time. If you need specific information, Edward has made his booklet, Real Solutions for Americans, available online. It does take about 64 pages to print, but if you're concerned about the future of our country, it's well worth the effort. I have a copy of it with me here tonight, which you may review, as well as I have his web address where you can locate it, make a copy for yourself, your family, your friends. If you want a real change that reflects the views and concerns of most Americans, the best hope for a better America is my candidate, Mr. John Edwards, for President of the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Paul Bartoshevich for the Kerry campaign.
It is a pleasure to be here tonight. I've supported John Kerry since the summer of last year, and I've supported him strictly on the issues of character, experience, and most recently, demeanor. I had the great pleasure to speak and meet with Senator Kerry this last weekend with one of my 4 children in New Hampshire. And I had to go there because I have covered presidential campaigns on a national level for a radio network in Washington, D.C. in 1980 and 1984. And I really needed to hear this man speak and address a crowd before I could really stand up here before you and support him the way I am. I was thrilled with the way he connected with veterans. I was thrilled with his endorsement from the League of Conservation Voters. It is my belief, as I think for all of you, that as we look to this national election, we need somebody who is electable. And I think John Kerry is infinitely electable. It is unlikely that there will be much crossover voting in this election. Sensing a chance with the second Bush administration to remake America, if not the world, for generations to come, Republicans feel as deeply about electing this man as we feel about ousting him. That leaves the election less in the hands of the middle circle of people, approximately 1/3 of the voters who align with neither party. And I believe John Kerry is the man who can carry those middle voters, the moderates that will decide this election. I've had the great privilege for the last 9 years to work on behalf of John Kerry's wife, Teresa Hines Kerry. She is a woman who has compassion for those who are less privileged. She supports women's pension rights as an issue that is something that falls right off the radar screen, but women live longer than men. They earn less over the course of their lifetime, and thus they're left without a pension plan that can cover them. They will make an extraordinary couple in the White House, and I sincerely hope that you will consider John Kerry, and I hope you'll vote for him for President of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Paul Moore for the Kucinich campaign.
Well, first of all, you may not have heard very much about me because on the 17th of December, Ted Koppel and I had a discussion, and the day after I didn't have much campaign coverage. But my name is Dennis Kucinich, and if you turn it upside down, the last 3 letters of the name are sin. And my last name is Kucinich, which if you have a little bit of spelling is Kucinich. And if you really understand my name, you'll really understand what my whole campaign is about. Usually I get an itch about something being wrong. And then I start thinking, what's wrong? Who missed the mark, which is what sin means? And is it a sin of omission, or is it a sin of commission, or is it the Bush administration and it's both? So then I do some homework, and then I try to figure out what is the right thing to do. And then the coup is really not K-O-O, you know, but it's K-U. But if you say that backwards, it's O. Okay, that's what's got to happen. And so if you understand my name, you will understand this whole campaign, because the premise of our campaign is that you can't do anything for a piece of the population. You have to do it for the whole population. We're all on this planet together. We have to support one another. What's the common good for all of us? That's one concept that everything in my campaign drives from. And the other one is that nobody's home until we're all home. That means that even the terrorists who are scaring the hell out of us right now deserve to have a life. So we have to have vision and compassion that's big enough to see a picture that's grand for the world, not just for the next 4 years. So my platform relates to that. I say, get out of NAFTA and WTO because there's not fair rights in it for the environment or for the people that work. I say a single-payer health care system because it's the only way to deal with health care, because you have to deal with the whole population. You can't just deal with a small set of people fighting against another set for different commodities that they're both trying to get. And I say have integrity, like my voting record in Congress. I'm doing a political campaign now for president, and yet my voting record in Congress, I'm there 75% of the time. Some people who aren't with us anymore, it's 5%. So, 2 things to remember as examples of this. 3 million people are out of work. NAFTA and WTO is the cause of that symptom. And healthcare, I'm the only candidate here that supports on one single-payer healthcare system. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Joan Bouquet for the Clark campaign.
Have you started planning me yet? Okay, so I can look around for a second. A poll came out today, I read about in tompaine.com, that said that 70% of the American public believes that national security and terrorism is a very important issue in this election. That's 70% of the public. And polls consistently show that the American people have more confidence in Republicans to manage our national security. If we're talking about electability, I believe it's a mistake to dismiss this issue or take it lightly, which I think a lot of us tend to do because it's not the big issue for us. I support Wesley Clark for president because I believe he has the best chance of beating George Bush. And I also think he'd make a great leader for this country. How many of you saw Bowling for Columbine? A lot of you. So you know about Michael Moore, who made the film. He's really great. He wrote a letter about Wesley Clark, and I'm going to quote from him because he says it so much more eloquently than I could. Quote from Michael Moore, "I'm convinced that the surest slam dunk to remove Bush is with a 4-star general, top of his class at West Point, Rhodes Scholar, Medal of Freedom winning gun owner from the South, who also by chance happens to be pro-choice, pro-environment, and anti-war. He's also pro-gun control, by the way. You don't get handed a gift like this very often." Okay, end of quote. Now let's talk about demographics. No Democrat has ever won the presidency without winning at least 5 southern states. Back to Michael Moore, quote, "The decision in November is going to come down to 15 states and just a few percentage points. So I had to ask myself, and I want you to honestly ask yourself, who has the best chance of winning Florida, West Virginia, Arizona, Nevada, Missouri, and Ohio? Because that is the only thing that's going to matter in the end. And it's Clark who stands the best chance, and maybe the only chance to win those southern and midwestern states. And that we have to win those states in order to accomplish Bush removal." Well, I fully agree with Michael Moore, and he may be wrong, and maybe I'm wrong, and wouldn't that be wonderful? But if a candidate who is perceived to be a Northeastern liberal wins the nomination, And if, as a result, Bush is reelected, we'll probably end up with a Scalia Supreme Court, and at that point, the religious right will control all three branches of the U.S. government. And if you want to know more about that, I'm speaking on it next Wednesday. I have some flyers here at TC3 at noon. But it's something everybody should understand. I don't want to take any chances. I love all the candidates, but I don't want to fool around with this. Okay, I'm going to wind it up. I'll wind up with a quote from Michael Moore. I believe that Wesley Clark will end this war. He will make the rich pay their fair share of taxes. He will stand up for the rights of women, African Americans, and the working people of this country. And he will cream George W. Bush. I strongly urge you to vote for Wes Clark. Let's join together, this is Michael Moore, but I agree, to ensure that we're putting forth our best chance to defeat Bush on the November ballot. It's at this point, for the sake of the world, a moral imperative.
Thank you, John. Ken Sanderson for the Lyndon LaRouche campaign.
We gather here in conference as our contribution to the process that will determine our nation's next president. Our nation has reached a tumultuous 200 years of age. Now we are in a rather advanced stage of economic collapse that has at least 48 of our states in budgetary crisis. The worst is yet to come if we persist in our policies of the last 40 years. I accepted this task tonight on Mr. LaRouche's behalf, conditioned to a commitment to myself to be totally truthful, regardless of the struggle I may initiate. We, the current voting population of the United States, were anticipated by our founding ancestors, truly our multi-great-grandparents. We inherited from them a reason object in the unsensible domain of human reason. That real sense object casts a shadow to our senses that we know as standard of living, lifestyle, and likewise. Cast forward in time to us, their posterity, were universal principles of government of human social order, which they had come to know through laborious rediscovery of principles, which had been discovered by geniuses of their past, to which they added discoveries of their lives' work in the domain of human reason. Such is the effect that we here today have we come to know as they did, can love what we do for our posterity as they loved us, which we know undeniably, because they risked their lives, their fortunes, and their honors to set this nation on the land discovered for that purpose by European circles of people around Christopher Columbus. The vector of geniuses includes Da Vinci, Raphael, Leibniz, Mozart, Beethoven, Kepler, Gauss, Moses Mendelssohn, Frederick Schiller, Shakespeare, Benjamin Franklin, Abraham Lincoln, Franklin D. Roosevelt, John and Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King. And I submit to your reasonable proof, Lyndon H. LaRouche. I submit to your sovereign power of reason that no candidate is qualified to be our president at this time of world historical crisis who has not personally rediscovered the universally effective principles and associated methods of discovery we know as the scientific method that made possible our present world human population of 6 billion souls. Scientific activity is the essence of the wave of love of humanity cast forward to their future, our now, which we must surf to avoid the looming undertow of worldwide war and economic collapse. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And Martha Robertson for the Dean campaign.
Thank you. Thanks, friends, for coming out tonight. I want to also thank the folks in the back who brought the materials, including Jan Quarles, who broke her arm yesterday, told me this morning she couldn't make it. She's here, and she found a way. She's here. Thank you very much. I want to thank Barbara Mink, who was going to help me out with this. The ship's passing in the night, but she's going to help with backup on questions. And I also want to mention you should please go to deanforamerica.com If you have any questions, it's a fascinating website. Lots of concrete proposals, great information, anything you want to know about the Dean campaign. I've been interested in Howard Dean since I heard last spring sometime, I guess, that there was this Vermont governor somewhere who was running for president, and he was against the war. The more I learned, the more I liked Howard Dean, and I think you will too. I admit that after the Iowa caucuses, I was concerned, like many people. More than anything, I want a candidate who will beat George Bush. But I went to New Hampshire this weekend to work on the campaign, and I had the chance to hear Dr. Dean speak a couple of times. I had the chance to see his legions of passionate volunteers and see his organization in action. I now believe that not only can he beat George Bush, I think he's the only Democrat in the race that can beat George Bush. Here are my top 3 reasons for supporting Howard Dean. Number 1, he will stand up for his convictions even if it's not convenient. The war and the signing of Vermont civil unions law are just 2 examples. In fact, Howard Dean made it necessary for Democrats to oppose the Iraq War and stand up to Bush. Kerry, Edwards, and Clark are now all using his message. Just change the words a little bit. It's Howard Dean's message. The 2002 elections proved that Democrats won't win by being Bush light, and Howard Dean gets that. Number 2, Howard Dean has already delivered results. He balanced his state's budget 11 times, and not just during the Clinton good years, but, as he likes to say, during both Bush recessions. Nobody else in this race has done that. And moderate Republicans, by the way, really resonate with that. I saw that in New Hampshire this past weekend. They are very interested in somebody who can balance a budget. At the same time, Dean delivered education, health care, paid off an inherited $70 million deficit, and built rainy day reserves that are helping Vermont now. A physician, he guaranteed health coverage to virtually every child in Vermont under age 18 and expanded prescription drug programs for seniors. Number 3, Howard Dean has already changed the Democratic Party and this whole race. Because his millions of dollars have come from small donors, he won't owe anyone anything except the American people. Is he electable? Absolutely. Chris Matthews of Hardball said on Tuesday night after Dean's speech, "There is now music in this race. We've had lyrics before, but Howard Dean gave the Democrats music tonight, music and romance." Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Over the last couple of weeks, I was spamming all my friends saying, send me questions that we can ask the panel this evening, and I ended up with a list of 20-odd interesting questions. Actually, I was going to make that into a handout till I realized that paying for another 200 copies was more than the budget was going to handle for tonight. But I did get a bunch of wonderful questions that we're not using. But a tip of the hat to pushback for the question that we are going to use. And each speaker is going to get 2 minutes on this question, and we're going to start with Paul Moore and then go in the same sequence. Passing the buck, so-called devolution of the costs of essential government programs from federal to state to local levels, along with federal tax cuts, has created a crisis of ballooning local property tax rates, which undermine local services while shifting the tax burden from the wealthy to ordinary homeowners. What steps would your candidate take to support more progressive taxation and reduce the burden on property taxpayers in New York and nationwide? Paul, you're it.
Question. I have 2 thoughts about that. One is that there is a progressive tax act that's been proposed in Congress in 2003 that has 4 different aspects to it. One is that there's a refundable $1,500 payroll tax credit. There's a $2,000 simplified family tax credit. There's a major closing of corporate loopholes, and there's a major repeal of the erroneous Bush tax cuts. So there's a switch in making some money available in the federal government, and one would hope that it might trickle downward in the right direction. But that's only a piece of it. The net effect of that would be a $20 billion increase in income per year. So I guess that makes something available. But the other part is that, Joan mentioned it a little bit, the federal government is kind of running fiscally out of control. And, it's almost slightly misguided would be an understatement, but it would almost seem like there's an intention to go, what are we now, $17 trillion in debt? No, 7. Sorry, what's the number? It's a big number. Okay? And it's almost intentional to see how good those 4 words are on the money, "In God We Trust," and it's almost like a setup for something to happen. But be that as it may, I don't think there's going to be any miracles that way. So the intention of the Progressive Tax Act is to basically make the tax rules more equitable and to refund back the taxes of the Bush cut and to start to clarify things a little bit. And, I've been given a hard time, or, Dennis has, about this is not dramatic, telling the truth. And sometimes it's just, you have to tell the truth.
Thank you, Paul. Joan.
I'm hoping I'll have time for John Bishop to join me from the Clark campaign. He's professor of industrial relations at Cornell. But anyway, this is a good example of how Clark thinks. And people have so little understanding of Clark. I invite you to go to our table in the back. Mike Bishop is sitting there. What's his name? Michael Moore's full letters there that lays out all his policies, and there's lots more to him than people realize. Taxes. This is a killer issue for the Democrats, because as soon as they talk about repealing Bush's tax cuts, the Republicans yell, "Oh, they want a tax raise," and you may not believe it, and I don't believe it, but a whole lot of people do. And that's a really killer issue for the Democrats. So what is Clark's proposal? People earning $50,000 or less pay no taxes. They don't even file a form. They pay no taxes. And the median income in this country is just under $50,000. People earning $50,000 to $100,000 have a great reduction. Everyone earning upwards of $1 million pays a 5% increase, and that will cover all the needs. He's worked it out, and he's a professor of economics. He was at West Point. I'd like John to speak to his job creation policies.
The job creation.
Microphone, please.
There is so much more detail on Wes Clark's website regarding his economic plan than I found in any of the other websites. Specifically, he proposes a tax credit like what we had in 77 and 78 that stimulated a big increase in employment to get us out of the recession of 74, 75, that says to companies, if you increase employment by more than 2% in the United States, you get a $5,000 per person tax credit for that increase. This will shift and encourage employment increases instead of the emphasis of the Bush administration, which is to cut the cost of capital and increase the profitability of American companies.
Thank you, Joan and John. Ken?
This question is based on the wrong assumption that we of the Democratic Party can continue to ignore the old Franklin D. Roosevelt base of our party, the forgotten man. That is 80% of our population, the labor force, the working people. The crisis of forgetting this group of people was accomplished in the hyped atmosphere known as the consumer post-industrial society. That we of the USA would somehow provide the management activity for the rest of the world and live very high lifestyles somehow. So we targeted the top 20% income people to base our party. The lower 80% have little representation, which has caused their exclusion from access to the physical economy through income purchasing power deflation. You can't continue to do that and win anything but misery. Let's change the policy back to productivity. That kind of good reasoning will reflect into corrected tax policy without eliminating necessary general welfare services.
Thank you, Ken. Martha.
Interesting, this question came from Pushback, which I didn't submit, but
This is my question.
I'm a member of Pushback because I'm also a member of the county legislature here. So I asked Howard Dean about this this weekend, and he absolutely gets it, that federal mandates, unfunded mandates, are pushing down cost of programs, essential programs, onto property taxes. He's the only one who talks about this in his stump speeches. He's the only one who recognizes the connection between federal income tax cuts and property tax increases. On his website, you've got a page called Repeal the Bush Tax Cuts and Reform the Tax Code. The first paragraph reads like a position statement out of Pushback. What would he do? He would basically repeal the Bush tax cuts, return the tax code to rates that were in effect during the prosperous years of the Clinton-Gore administration. Further, he would go on to close corporate loopholes, which he estimates are costing up to $100 billion a year. He would also fund the IRS sufficiently so that to correct the fact that President Bush's own tax commissioner testified that the IRS lacked sufficient resources to collect $30 billion in known unpaid taxes. These are the kind of proposals that somebody who's actually balanced the budget knows how to do. He knows what the effects of federal mandates are. And by the way, he's also not, John Edwards is not the only candidate to talk about poverty. He mentioned Barbara Ehrenreich's book, Nickeled and Dimed, a couple times in the speeches I heard this weekend. He gets it about poverty. He gets it about taxes. And there is no Bush tax cut for the middle class. Teresa, real quick, what?
Fully fund special ed in the first year because that's the biggest thing for the school taxes.
Okay, so in addition to what we've talked about, he would fully fund special education at the commitment made 25 years ago by the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Kathy?
This is going to be a little more extemporaneous. I'm real happy to hear that Dean agrees with John Edwards about funding unfunded mandates. John Edwards has been talking about that for quite a while, and if we're going to run together, we really need to get together. Now I'll read you what I actually wrote. John Edwards' real solution for America includes fully funding federally mandated programs, something that the Bush administration has not done. And this will free up state budget monies. Further, he will be allocating $50 billion to state and local governments to help them ease their current problems, with $10 billion of this being mandated for use to Homeland Security. This is today. I talked to the campaign today. So that may not be anywhere else, but it's here now. He will also lower taxes on homeowners, as well as providing tax breaks to first-time homeowners. John plans to raise taxes for the wealthiest 1%, so that their taxes equal to the real taxes paid by middle-class taxpayers. He will also provide matching funds to people's retirement savings accounts. Whether or not the states allocate the monies provided them and how they allocate them is something we need to take up with New York State once the federal monies are allocated. When I first saw this question, I saw a real problem here. Any one of our candidates can say they'll do something. We've got a Republican Congress, and right now, we can't necessarily do, all of our candidates will say what they're going to do, but we have to get out there and vote in other Democratic, for our senators, for our congressmen, and we have to get people out there. They don't vote. Okay, one more thing. Budget caps, pay as you go. John Edwards wants to cap the budget. In other words, we're not going to just be spending money. If it isn't coming in, it's not going out. He wants to close government agencies that have outlived their usefulness. I like this one, the offer of thrift supervision. Anybody heard of that? Okay. And he wants to close tax holes that will let companies avoid taxes by renouncing their United States citizenship. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Paul.
The folks from Zogby have tracked both New Hampshire and Iowa, and they also, I just today read a poll from Michigan where John Kerry has gone to a double-digit lead in the polls. And the issue of economic development is one of the top reasons why he has gained traction in the last couple of weeks. John Kerry has come out and said that he would immediately repeal the tax cut for the people of America who earn $200,000 or more. By repealing the George Bush tax cut, that will free up at least $50 billion in the next 2 years that will go directly to education, tuition increases on the college level from state university systems and other programs on the state level. He calls it his State Tax Relief and Education Fund. It is a program that I would encourage you as well to go to johnkerry.com and look at his economic programs, because he has an effort underway that he's gone after the richest Americans, but the middle class remains with their tax cuts. The additional thing is that he is concerned for lower and middle income taxpayers and an innovative plan for health care that would be universally available, in part by providing government coverage for catastrophic illness in return for lower premiums on private insurance. He has also suggested that he is a strong advocate of national service. Anybody who attended the State University of New York system knows, or if you're looking at it now, you know that one of the hidden tax cuts is increased tuition. He has suggested offering 4 years of college tuition to young people who agree to spend 2 years volunteering their time after college. And so again, I would go back and suggest that go to johnkerry.com. I am not his economic specialist, but I am a father of 4. I'm a taxpayer. I'm concerned about the economic policies of the Bush administration, and I think you'll find what you like at the johnkerry.com site. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, one more question for the entire panel, and you're going to have just 1 minute for this one. Only one of the candidates will be nominated at the convention in Boston in July. If your candidate is not the nominee, what steps will he take to support the nominee in defeating Bush? And for this one, we start with, what did I say, with Ken.
This question also begs your forgiveness of me for reminding you that polls have been produced that show no current DNC-approved candidate can win against President Bush. That same poll shows that an unidentified Democrat could win. There is no such candidate except Lyndon LaRouche. Now the Bush problem is Vice President Cheney. So anyone who is going to beat Bush must address the Cheney issue forthrightly, vigorously, as alone LaRouche has done for over a year. Now, on the ground, the LaRouche youth movement, with its unprecedented high intellectual approach to science, statecraft, art, music, and religion, is the flanking operation against the neocon war machine wherever in the world they have beachheaded. If you fail to understand that current political social process, you are bound to become largely irrelevant in national politics. The DNC performance in recent congressional and presidential elections has exposed a losing policy that I call supportive of Vice President Cheney's imperial war policy. If the Democratic Party will do its duty, 80% men, then we will win this campaign. Cards are face up. Pick a winner.
Thank you. Martha.
Obviously, the candidates haven't spoken yet about what specific steps they'll take to support the eventual nominee, but Howard Dean hasn't come this far to change America and change the Democratic Party to see George Bush get elected because of a splintered Democratic Party. I'm confident that if the time comes, and I don't think it will, that Dr. Howard Dean will have to turn over his donors, his volunteers. I am confident that he will do what's needed and make sure the focus is on George W. Bush. I want to point out that he has raised more than $40 million, and he continues to raise money at about $1 million a day. Average contributions, $89 a person. That has never happened before. This is a whole new animal. He doesn't have the media on his side, and now that he's sort of the underdog, maybe he will. But I'm sure that he will make sure that these new people and these new donors will come into the fold for November. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Kathy.
Well, on this one I prepared the wrong answer. I thought, what would I do? And of course I'm going to support anybody that can beat Bush. I like our candidates this year. Can you imagine if we could get those guys all together, working together for our government, what our government could be like? That's all I've been thinking about. I've been trying to decide which one to put in each spot. But you know, I still like, John Edwards, hope. It's the hope. It's the hope. But I really think that John Edwards has been one of the ones who has been least likely to snipe. He has not said bad things. This is hard for me because I'm more likely to be more like Howard Dean than I am like John Edwards. So it's a challenge. I'm a mouthy person and he's polite. But the point is, I really genuinely think, I know that I'm a John Edwards supporter, and I have been since I first heard his name practically, because I heard him talk and I just liked it. I thought, it's been so bad for so long. So, okay, we're on your side. Whoever you pick, I'll help. I don't know what I can do, but I'll help.
Thank you, Kathy. Paul?
I took great interest in this question, and I think we're all in agreement that John Kerry will support whomever gets the nomination. John has been in the Senate since 1985. He has a lot of contacts out there. I know that some people don't like the establishment, but if we're going to beat George Bush, we've got to be established. And John Kerry knows the establishment knows John. John has 3 Purple Hearts. He has a silver star, a bronze star from his service in Vietnam. He carries with him an incredible message with veterans of all wars. Bipartisanship, again, going back to the middle. We're going to win this thing only if we grab the middle of the country. And I think John Kerry can help do that by his service to this country and his connection with what he calls his band of brothers. Finally, the convention is going to be happening in Boston. I'm sorry. The convention is going to be happening in Boston. That is John Kerry's backyard. He knows the people there. He will support whomever gets the nomination. John Kerry's going to get the nomination, and I feel strongly that everybody will support him as well, and we look forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul.
Well, the quote from the Kucinich campaign was, "When it's time, I will wholeheartedly support the Democratic nominee to beat Bush in any way I can." Okay. But the way I remember it, today's the 29th of January, okay? And next February is a big primary. And our primary here is in March. And the major Democratic convention is in July, and the presidential election is in November. So if we don't really listen to our heart and figure out what it is that we want, if we don't do that now and make points for what's important to say about health care, about jobs, about the environment, about anything, if we're just going out of fear that the best thing we can do right now is vote because that's going to make George Bush beatable today, then that totally ignores the process of the Democratic primary process. It just totally ignores it. So the purpose is, I believe, to vote with your heart and go with what you believe needs to be the best to make everything work. And everything will fall where it has to. Thank you, Paul. And permit me to insert my own editorial comment here. In case it's not perfectly clear to everyone, there's only going to be one nominee after July, but I hope all the folks who are here supporting one or another of these candidates are thinking about, your guy might be the guy and he might not, but we need all of us working on this for November, not just the group that was getting one particular candidate nominated, and I hope that's where we're going to go, and that's how we're going to win in November. I'm terribly sorry, John. My fault. John gets
Well, of course he will absolutely get behind any candidate in any way Clark can, particularly with all of his national security experience. But I just want to say a brief thing. I heard someone use the word Bush light, and I just really take issue with that word. I don't think there's any Democratic candidate. I'm not even sure what it means, but it's one of those divisive terms that implies somehow if it doesn't meet our perception of something, then they're like Bush. This kind of language to me itself is quite divisive. And I invite you to check out Clark. Really look into his policies. You'll be amazed. A friend of mine she was very upset that I'm supporting Clark, and she said, oh, I'm so radical. I'm really radical. I don't even know if any of these candidates are radical enough for me. So she went to the computer, punched in all this data about, asking all these questions and to match her with a candidate, and guess who she matched up with? She was stunned. Clark. He turned out to be the most radical. So check him out. Forget about the perceptions. Go for the real stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And again, my apologies for losing track of the rotation here. Okay, we want to open this up to questions from the public, and we're going to have to choreograph this a little bit carefully in order to, first of all, get the questions into a microphone. Even if you can shout, if we wanted to get picked up by the videotape microphones, you have to speak into a microphone. And the way I want to do this is we're going to take one speaker at a time and invite a question for that speaker, give them a chance to answer it, and then move on to the next speaker and invite a question for that person. Then the person asking the question can either come up here to the podium or can go, there's a second microphone back there where Peter is standing at the moment. We're going to limit the question time to 60 seconds, hopefully less, and we're going to limit the answers to 2 minutes. Where shall we start? How about if we arbitrarily start at this end with Kathy again?
Yeah, why not?
Does someone have a question for Kathy and the Edwards campaign? Anyone?
I'll ask a question if no one else will.
Okay, either come up to the podium or go to...
Have a question?
I didn't see one.
Okay, this question
Microphone, please.
has to do with what I think about the candidates. I'm just asking it because no one else has asked the question. Are you concerned about attacks on Edwards that are being made by some Republicans concerning the fact that he's a trial lawyer?
Okay, I'm not a politician. I'm not a... Yeah, I know you are. That's sort of unfair, because if I didn't know that, I'd still have to answer that question or try to. I'm upset by attacks on anyone. We shouldn't be attacking one another. I'm concerned about attacks. I'd have to hear what the person said in order to respond to it, and I might choose not to respond to it, because if somebody is being really obnoxious, that's a good word, huh? You're not going to change their mind. You're not going to make them happier. If somebody wants to fight, I would prefer to pass it unless it's a case of national security, in which case you attack me, I'll probably fight back. Is that enough? I don't know. That's probably way too much, right?
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Question for Paul Bartoshevich and the Kerry campaign. Barbara, come to the mic, please.
First, I just want to commend the panel for their articulate and witty
That's not a PA mic,
discussions.
that's just a broadcast mic, so
So what should I do? Not shout? Shout?
It just looks like it's a mic.
Everybody is very good. That was right. One of the things that attracted a lot of people to Howard Dean from the beginning and even now was his ability to get to the point and say things other people were afraid of saying. So, for example, he was demonized in the press for saying that the United States is not safer because Saddam Hussein was behind bars, which everyone knows is true. That the middle-class tax cut doesn't outweigh the tax increases caused by devolution. Everybody knows that's true. I don't hear that kind of precision when John Kerry talks. The quote I heard today, Paul, that I want you to respond to, or just the question of precision in general, is he was responding to questions about national security and his expertise in that area, and said that he voted for almost every weapon system that came before him because it was worth doing, but he needs to be president because there are those in Congress who never met a weapon system they didn't like. And it sounded like he was trying to balance both sides of the equation and come out really nowhere. How is Kerry going to hone his message so that we know really where he stands?
Well, I will say that I thought he was very precise when I saw him speak this last week. And, you know, there's been a lot of talk about John's vote on the Iraq War resolution. He joined with our senators, Democratic senators from this state, in voting for it under, well, and in quoting Salon.com today, not all the candidates have been as precise as one might believe when it comes to their opposition of the war. But, Barbara, I think that John Kerry's 18 years of service in the Senate, on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, lays him out there, cards up, and you can look at the man and see his voting record. I don't agree with every vote that John Kerry has ever made, but he's been pretty consistent on his support of the military program in this country, and I think it will continue to be. He came back from Vietnam and opposed the war. He's taking shots from veterans in some circles because of that, but he lived it. He spent time there. He took bullets through the shirt. And he is supportive of military technology that allows the United States of America to remain in its position. But he also believes in sharing the discussion with foreign powers. And he would have never gone to war the way President Bush did. It would have been a coalition, and it would have been something that would have brought the world together, not torn it apart. But he has supported military programs. I happen to laud that. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Paul Moore for the Kucinich campaign. Does someone have a question? Roberta, come to a microphone, please.
You talked about the primary being a time to vote your heart. And a lot of people that I have talked to have said to me, well, really, Dennis Kucinich is the person who most represents everything I believe in, but I don't think he can win. So I wonder why, what reasons you could give why people, even if they think maybe he can't win, why they might want to vote for him anyhow.
Okay. What is this quote? If you vote for me, I'll win. but besides that, suppose that it's only 2 or 3% or 10% or whatever. But suppose that the points that get made in the process of saying what you really want equitable global wages that are relatively fair. You really want, we really want an environment that's not getting ripped apart. We really don't want to have the oil crisis that's pretty much projectable to make, 2035 to 2045 to happen. So why would you not want to vote those things? And would happen is that there would, be some delegates that would say, here's 10% of the Democratic population at the convention, and that would draw the movement of progressive politics forward. Because, in fact, just take healthcare. Healthcare is not going to go away. A market-based system is not going to work, an employment-based system is not going to work, and it hasn't worked, and it can't work. Because there's not enough money to fight each other. So if there's a, quote, general decision that everyone is for healthcare, then even the pharmaceuticals and the HMOs and the insurance companies, they're now all playing the same game because someone said, this is the game. And if you even forget about that, and you just look at the insurance that we have, and take someone who's a drug addict who really needs to go into rehabilitation, but his insurance will only pay for 3 days of it, and 30 days of it is what he needs, and he dies. Well, that's the insurance we've got now. So it seems really important to talk about the issues and to have this be an open process rather than to have it just be, oh my God, we better go here now, because we'll get there. And July's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, do we have a question for Joan and the Clark campaign? Yeah, Matt.
I've been listening and wondering about not just who's against the war, but who's really for some steps toward peace. And I know that Kucinich is for a peace academy, and I've heard tonight that Kerry is for something that comes close to being like Vista in the United States. What I want to ask about is what has General Clark spoken about in relation to specific steps that might be taken toward peace?
I'm going to defer to Peter.
Wes Clark, the biggest problem we face in terms of international conflict is between the West, Haine, and Kosovo, who brought together a coalition in Europe. Wes Clark, who also was very involved in structuring and getting the peace agreement in Bosnia, another country where Muslims were being slaughtered. He would be the best representative from the West to the Muslim world to make the case that George Bush has destroyed our credibility in this part of the world, and he would be the best image of us to that part of the world.
Thank you, John. Okay, do we have a question for Ken and the LaRouche campaign? Joel.
I want to know,
come to the mic, please.
Where is it? Where is it?
Okay, at the podium.
Oh, nice.
You got 1 minute.
All right. I want to know, I asked Congressman Hishy this, I want to know about this. What's going to happen if you get rid of Bush and get a Democratic president in office? Is it going to be the same thing as the Clinton administration? It started way back to John F. Kennedy. It's a dog-eat-dog world. It seems like all politicians are cutting each other's throat and not contending to the business of the world and American issues, and not solving a problem at all, and our country's going to hell in a handbasket. I want to know what can be done, because I got a sense that the next administration is going to be the same thing. You're bashing Bush, look at Clinton, look at Reagan, look at Carter, and look at Nixon. It's been one dog-eat-dog world through our administration from the John Kennedy administration. It's got to stop. Otherwise, our country is not going to heal at all. It's only going to get worse. And I tell you, then the world is going to take up on us, and we're going to be in real serious trouble, because we're not helping each other.
Joel, thank you.
Just answer that question. said you want to trade. No problem. I need extend the time till 9:15. That's tomorrow morning. I'll handle it forthrightly. I think most of us understand what he said. The truthfulness in the expressions that he's made to us. The passion in his statement of those conditions. And I repair back to what I said in our introduction, in my first comments, that we in the Democratic Party stand in a position to decide who the next president is going to be. That must be a decision that changes the last 40 years of our history. That in fact recalls to the front the forgotten man. That gives him a foundation in the economy that provides a standard of living for each person that is that which is equal to the increase in productive power of labor that has been produced by our discovery and application of universal physical principles over the last thousands of years. That solves the problem, if we can rise to that occasion.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a question for Martha and the Dean campaign? The fellow standing up here, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Gary Townsend. I'm the Common Council person from the 4th Ward. My question to the Dean camp is, since Mrs. Kennedy, Hillary Clinton, the First Lady's role has become very, very prominent full-time position. Dean's wife has said that her practice of practicing medicine comes first. How can she, if Dean is elected president, what would occur with her practice, and how can she sort of use that role to, I don't know, help the country, or just speak on that?
And I was all set to talk about electability, but okay. Dr. Judy Steinberg Dean is a new kind of role model for girls, women, and men to know that this is a true partnership. This is a partnership where her career, indeed, is as important as his. Her choices are every bit as important as his, and their children are as important to her as they are to him. I met her too in New Hampshire, and her genuineness, we ain't seen anything like this in American politics. Just, I don't know, her sweater sets, the way she sits, her hair. This is a real working woman. She represents the millions of real working women in this country, and she will be there when President Dean needs her. She'll be there when the country needs her. She'll also be there when her patients need her. By the way, Dr. Howard Dean, when she was speaking with him on Monday, this past Monday, he said that her patients were starting to call her and say, Dr. Dean, Dr. Steinberg, you should cancel my appointment. You don't need to see me. You got to go campaign with Howard. And by the way, these were the patients who had originally been his patients, and then when he became governor, sort of went into her practice. So this is, again, another new animal. This is a strong woman who strengthens her husband by being a strong woman, and I couldn't be prouder.
Thank you, Martha. Okay, continuing around the loop, back to Kathy and the Edwards campaign. Do we have another question for the Edwards campaign?
Sure.
David.
Could you just elaborate on what I heard about Edwards in terms of his ability to articulate issues of race relations as one of the profoundest problems that we're going to be dealing with in America in the next 10 years? or in the next 100 years, or however long it's going to take.
Okay. No notes on this, but I feel fairly confident. John Edwards grew up in the South. You know what I've been watching on TV? I've been watching the people in the audience. I like it when they pan the faces. That's why it's hard for me to give a real speech and tell you, because I want to see what people are thinking. I see smiling black faces. This is a man, you know, some of us that really grew up in the North, we didn't know much about the South, and we somehow thought the South was a really terrible place to be. But I've met black people that really like the South, and it's like, okay, I've got to rethink the way that I'm thinking. These people like where they're living. That means it's good. Just because I don't understand that doesn't mean it's not good. He's grown up with black kids playing with them. He works with black people every day. I think he's going to be more comfortable than, I'm trying to be positive. I think he'll be more comfortable than a lot of other people would be. Because to him, you're just one of his neighbors. Is that okay?
Thank you, Kathy. Another question for Paul and the Kerry campaign. The woman in the back. Don't talk till you get to the microphone, please. And remember, you need to shout.
Okay. Last October and going into the oncoming months before the war, there were hundreds of thousands of people who felt strongly enough that this war wasn't justified to march to Washington. It was very clear to us that Bush was hyping a case for war, that there was no threat to this country from Saddam Hussein. And we waited for John Kerry to stand up and say something, and he said nothing. So how come now he's, the person that's fit to lead this party?
Well, John Kerry, he's been there when you needed him, and he came back from Vietnam and immediately turned around and went to Congress and became an advocate against the war. I happen to be an American that, and God forgive me, I believed in my president when he spoke at the State of the Union address and said that that Saddam Hussein is seeking out enriched uranium from Niger. I believe the president when he said that there were weapons of mass destruction. And so did John Kerry, and so did Senator Clinton. And I went on anticipating this very issue tonight. I went online today, and if you believe in Salon.com as a source, I will state to you, which I do. In February 20th, 2003, Howard Dean said, if the UN and in the end chooses not to enforce its own resolutions, then the United States should give Saddam 30 to 60 days to disarm, and if he doesn't, unilateral action is regrettable but unavoidable. That's basically what John Kerry said. He did not give a war resolution to go into war the way George Bush did. He wanted the United Nations to give them more time to go in. And it's easy for somebody who's never had a federal voting record to stand up and say one thing. It's another thing to have acted for 18 years in the Senate and prior to that in Vietnam, and after that become literally a star because he came back with Purple Hearts, a Silver Star for his duty, and stood before Congress and said this war is wrong. So I'll stand on John Kerry for that.
Thank you, Paul. And another question for Paul Moore in the Kucinich campaign. Peter.
This isn't really a question, but I'm going to ask you if you agree with me. I am distressed at some of the questions that have particularly been asked of the Kerry campaign. I am not supporting Kerry. I want us all to agree that our overwhelming goal is to win this election coming in November. John Kerry, all of the people sitting there, their candidates may well be our nominee. And we have to work for him, and we have to put everything we can into defeating George Bush. And we must restrain ourselves
from asking the kinds of questions which can be used against us if that person is our nominee, no matter who you support. I would like to ask if everyone, all the people who are going to vote for whoever it is gets the Democratic nomination, just to stand up for a second and see if we are as united as I think we are. And I'd like to know if you agree with that.
No more Nader!
So, Paul, the microphone's yours. So I can answer that. Great. We're choosing to be Democrats. We're choosing to say that this is a civil society in which we respect one another, and the process that we're going to play, towards which we're going to aim in the Democratic presidential primary, that happens in July, is fair, honorable, equitable, above board, whatever the words are, to say that everyone shares what they have to say and they get heard. And how could it not be that we hold things back and say, oh, I'm not going to play that? I mean, we have to go that way if we're buying into the game called, democracy. I guess I am naive? I don't know. I mean, there's all sorts of things I could say. Howard Dean didn't happen to be the only person to be against the war. There just happens to have been a few things that Dennis said along the way. But the point is that we're playing a game in the United States of America that right now has two major political parties. And the game is coming of, there's not much activity in the Republican Party except for $200 million of finances, and us coming to convergence and clarity and harmony about what it is that is the statement that for 60 to 90 days we're going forward with. And that's what we're doing. I mean,
yeah, otherwise it's a tough question to get the George Bush, photo op.
Yeah, I mean, I could buy an aircraft carrier, I guess, and or a backdrop, but who cares?
Thank you, Paul. Do we have another question for the Clark campaign? Peter.
Joan, I guess this is for you. I am, it's interesting, this dialogue that's going on right now, because I would, if Clark wins the election, I'm scared to say this for the Bush must go people, but I would vote for Clark. I would vote for Kerry. I would vote for anybody to get Bush out of office. But it does seem like this is the time that we really need to be working out, like our hearts and stuff. And there does seem to be a little bit of an edge that we should, decide on that most electable person. In my sense right now, probably the most electable person is Kerry or Clark. But, I'm not saying I agree with that, but in terms of going to the convention, it seems like we need the candidates that, that we're also voting for delegates. So I just wonder, Joan, if you have a sense of, how do you think about, I'm sure you're not encouraging people to not vote their conscience, right? And vote for Clark. It's a slippery slope with Clark, I think.
No, there's nobody here that would go against my conscience. That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. When Move On had its vote, its election, I don't know how many participated in that, but I voted for Dean, and I sent him $200, which is a fortune for me. I did. And the whole time, I had this horrible feeling that we were going to get smeared. I did it because it felt good, but I also felt like I've been feeling really, really hopeless and despairing about the whole thing until Wesley Clark declared his candidacy, and I thought, oh my God, maybe we have a chance. And that's how I feel. And then the more I studied him, the more I discovered he's actually a great guy. But the big thing is, for me, I feel this really as strong, this is a real heartfelt statement, which is that I don't think we should be voting with our hearts. I think we need to be voting with our heads. Yeah. We need to read the polls. We need to look at what those Americans think, those 70% who believe national security is really important. All those Americans who believe Bush's tax cuts help the economy. We need to really understand that huge, huge number of people in the middle. 111 million people voted in 2000. The religious right made up 15 million, and it's probably going to go up to 19 or 20 million. I'm guessing, because I don't have statistics on this, that if we took every single progressive and liberal vote in this country, and everyone voted, and Nader didn't run, and every single progressive person voted, we might cancel out the religious right vote. That we might get up to like 30 million. We're 15, 20, maybe 20, 40, so that leaves like another 70 million people somewhere in the middle. And those are the people we have to reach, and they're not in this room. And it's hard for people sitting here to understand that Ithaca, what do they say, 10 square miles surrounded by reality? It's true.
Thank you, John. Do we have another question for Ken and the LaRouche campaign? I know, we're going to run over a few minutes because we started late. Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Ken to, I've been with LaRouche since the last election, 2000, and he's been with him longer. And LaRouche has been running for president with the Democrats since 1980. So there's a lot of material to cover. But if Ken can conjure up some of the things that are most important to him about what Lyndon LaRouche has already done, what he and his wife, Helga, have already done, what LaRouche's organization has already done worldwide. As acting, LaRouche has been acting as a president of the United States for a quarter century now, and he's been doing a lot worldwide. The Eurasian Land Bridge, the Italian Parliament has adopted his financial policies, the new Bretton Woods, and he's the one who started getting Cheney out of his bunker. So he's already beating Bush, and I'd like to thank him for that. And I'd like Ken to just give his impression of how Lyndon LaRouche has already been acting as a president.
I think I'd like to point out something, because that question is brought up in several different contexts. It means the same thing. And my answer in each case is that leadership is action, not election. Lyndon LaRouche recognized early on, as early as 1958 when he made his first forecast, 10 of which he made up through the 2000 period, every one occurring as he forecasted, that this world was headed for a new dark age. I don't think most of us in this room comprehend the seriousness of that recognition. What do we mean by a new dark age? Perhaps it might impress you to know that in the Black Death period of the collapse of the Bardi-Peruzzi banking system in 1315, that around 50% of the European population died through the Black Death and other failures of our ability to maintain the physical economy for human life support. Today, with the large human population, there wouldn't be a spot on the graph compared to what we go through if we allow this to occur. This is what Lyndon LaRouche's life's work has represented to prevent, to save civilization, in a sense from ourselves. The old Pogo comic strip, we have met the enemy and he is us. I ask us to rise in the power that we have that separates us from beast, the power of human cognition, the power to love humanity and the entirety of creation, the recognition that mankind is the likeness of the very creation principle of this universe, and it is our task and duty to fulfill that.
Thank you, Ken. And one more question for the Dean campaign. Bernie.
I'm going to ask this question anyway. We spend $1.8 trillion on health care in this country. Why should we support anybody or vote for anybody that's going to keep employer-based health care and for-profit health care intact?
I didn't hear the last info and what?
Well, the only one candidate, Kucinich, is the only one that's going to have a single-payer health care. The rest of them want to keep the employer-based and the for-profit health care intact. Now, that's really going to be disastrous for us, okay, with the deficit and everything else. So I'd like for you to answer that. Thank you.
Okay, are we going to have closing statements in addition? Okay. What?
Keep going.
Well, that was a clarification I needed, and I hope it doesn't take up the time, which I'd like to defer to Dr. David Halpert, the local organizer for Dean meetups.
Dean, in the 90s, supported Clinton's health care plan to bring health care to all Americans, but he also thought that it wasn't flying. So what he did in Vermont is he did a incremental program where he included all kids under the age of 18. He expanded programs for senior citizens so that 1/3 of seniors got prescription drug benefits. He fought the nursing care homes so that he provided home health services in Vermont so that rates for nursing homes fell about 20%. He fought the drug industry to provide prescription drug parity for mental health. And he took an incremental approach because it was a practical approach. He said that if Congress presents him with a single-payer health care system, he would sign it in a heartbeat. It's not that he's not against it. He just thinks it'll never pass. And I think one reason why he's so good is he can see what the ideals should be, but he can also be practical and get things done. I'd rather have a president who gets things done, who moves the country in the right direction, than somebody who has all the good intentions in the world, but people remain uninsured. So I think he has an excellent health care program. I've looked at it very closely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our agenda allows 1 minute for each of the speakers to make a closing statement. We're already over our time a little bit. Are folks willing to stay for another 6 minutes so we can give folks a chance to wrap up? Can we do that? Yes. Okay, thank you for your patience. For this last one, why don't we flip the order and start at Martha's end and go the other way. 60 seconds and stick to it, guys, because we're running over.
Thank you. I wish I had time to talk about the Republican media. If we think the Republicans are not already in this race, if we think they're standing by, you're wrong. They are involved in this race, and they are most scared of Howard Dean, and they have been feeding the media stories to make him look as bad as possible. That he's the one they're afraid of. He has a record. Talk about a record, a federal voting record. How about a record of running a state for 11 years in the black? The interesting thing about electability, it doesn't show up in my Microsoft, my Word spell check. It's a new word. It means, what do I think somebody else wants in a president? Well, my opinion is that Americans are desperate for health care, desperate for jobs, they're desperate for fiscal responsibility. This is the man, he's a doctor, for crying out loud. He's going to provide health care, jobs, and responsibility, and that's what people really are going to care about next November. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Ken, 1 minute.
In closing, I ask you to return to the confines of your sovereign power of reason, to come to know the historical person Lyndon H. LaRouche. He was the first announced Democratic pre-candidate who has spent the past 40 years in worldwide physical, political, economic organizing, who has early proven that our pathway in this is guided by beauty in art, music, and rigorousness in science, and truthfulness in all totality of universal physical economy, practice, and policy. The world and the United States needs a President LaRouche. No other party candidate can handle this momentous task. It is the possibility, and I say the duty and honorable responsibility, of those who will vote Democratic in the 2004 presidential election, to give that gift to ourselves and to the world.
Thanks, Ken. Joan, 1 minute.
The truth is that whoever gets elected isn't going to be able to do much because the religious right controls both houses of Congress. Whoever gets elected, I predict, if a Democrat gets elected, will not get one federal judge appointed until we change the Senate. I love Kucinich's health plan. He's the only one that makes sense on health care. I gave money to Howard Dean, as I said before. Kerry is incredible on the environment. He's wonderful. I mean, really, it's a tremendous voting record. It doesn't matter. They're dealing with Tom DeLay and Jim Inhofe, and I mean, it just doesn't matter. All that matters is who wins, and we cannot turn our backs on 70 million voters who are not us and not the religious right and are going to decide this election. We can't turn our backs on Ohio and Florida and West Virginia and those states, and we can't turn our backs on the 70% who say national security is very important. I think our best chance is Clark, and I think we need to use our heads.
Thank you, Joan. Paul?
Let's see. The important one. There's a wonderful concert on Sunday over on the Commons at Wessex Bristol Galleries to support Dennis Kucinich, and then you'll find out that he is impossible or he is I'm possible. Dr. Dean wrote a little thing called Common Sense, kind of coming off Tom Paine, but in fact it's uncommon sense that we need now. We need to look at the global perspective of a citizen of the planet and what that means and how that fits in to the whole of this democratic process. And that means in terms of the United States government, we need to look at direction of where we're going. And in particular, the federal deficit and the funding by the Pentagon and what that takes away from the trickle-down spending down to the ground. So with an awful lot of deep thinking, check out all of the websites, do a lot of reading, get involved, and go for it.
Thank you, Paul.
I would have felt a lot differently and a lot less nervous a month ago standing here on behalf of John Kerry before he was the front runner. There's a reason why he's the front runner now. There's a reason why people coming out of their cars in New Hampshire went to the polls thinking they were going to vote one candidate. They're thinking with their heart, driving to the polls. They thought with their head when they got out of their car. John Kerry is the kind of candidate and knows the Senate who has established bipartisan relationships, especially with John McCain on a variety of issues. If we're going to get things done in the Congress, I agree with you, we're going to have to forge coalitions, and John Kerry has a history of that. John Kerry feels compassionately about the environment. We haven't talked about that much tonight. The League of Conservation Voters came out in favor of him. He is a man who has suddenly gotten traction, and I thank God for that. I will support, I'm sure John Kerry will support, the nominee. Think about what has happened in the last 2 weeks. Think about what is happening as we move forward. And I think you'll understand if you take a look at John Kerry, the middle of the country is going to be with him, and it's going to be what it takes to elect the next president.
Thank you, Paul. And Kathy?
I don't know how well I've represented John Edwards tonight. This is a few days. There is a website, www.johnedwards2004.com. They answer questions, too. They will even call you and talk to you. I like that. I'm hearing about heads and hearts. I talk about hope. I think we have to use our heads and our hearts. We have to review what each one of these candidates stands for, and I think we need to talk to our own candidates. If we see something another candidate has, how do you feel about this? So that by the time we get, well, I'd like to see it before November, that we are so unified. There are a lot more of us than there are of them, but we have to all get together and we all have to vote and we have to get other people to vote. And if we're not totally happy with the candidate that gets selected, we still need to vote because nothing could be worse than Bush and anything would be a whole lot better.
Well, it's been quite an evening. I again want to thank everybody up here on the dais who has helped make this evening possible. I want to thank all the people who helped organize tonight, help make it possible. Thank all of you for showing up on this cold, frosty evening to talk to each other, because I believe, and the reason I organized this event, I believe that one of the keys here is we've got to be talking to each other. We can't be 6 or 7 separate campaigns, each huddling, talking to their friends. We've all got to be talking to each other, building a consensus, and moving forward for November. Join us in that. Thank you for coming tonight. Please remember, we need to be out of here with the door locked at 9:30. So visit the literature tables, get voter registration forms at the door, but we got to be out in 10 minutes. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks for what you do.